All right, welcome everyone. We'll get started in just a few moments. At MIT Sloan, we have this thing called Sloan Time where we start just a little bit after the hour.
Right.
It's true for classes, maybe our online events. But as folks are joining in, feel free to update your Zoom name to include your program and class year. Also, feel free to type in the chat where you're tuning in from. And we'll get started in just a few moments. Burlington, Mass, not too far. Welcome. All right. We'll give another moment. And we'll go ahead and get started. So hello, everyone. Welcome to our MIT Sloan Alumni online event focusing on opportunity and empowerment through art. We are thrilled to have Liz Powers, the co-founder and CEO of ArtLifting, as well as Aimee Hofmann, abstract artist, who has joined with ArtLifting on the program today. They'll be discussing not only the business, but also the real human impact that ArtLifting is having in the community. So if you've joined our program before, you know the format. So we'll start with questions and remarks from our wonderful moderator and host, Jackie Selby, from the Executive MBA class of 2021. She will lead us through some pre-prepared questions, and then we will move to our pre-submitted and live questions from the audience today. For our audience, you can use the Q&A panel in your Zoom interface to submit questions, and we look forward to getting to as many of those as we can in our time together today. And so with that, Jackie, I will go ahead and turn it over to you, and I'll post a few links in the chat, a little bit about Aimee and Liz, as well as ArtLifting. But we're thrilled to have our speakers with us today, and we're really looking forward to the conversation. So Jackie, take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Greg, and thank you all for taking the time out of your day to join us. It really is a pleasure to have Liz and Aimee with us today. And I first discovered ArtLifting about 3 years ago when I was a student, and Liz came to speak to our class about her experiences as a founder. And we had many different presentations over those 3 years, but ArtLifting was one that just stuck with me all this time. And I think it really was just so moved by not only the personal stories of the artists who just showed an incredible amount of perseverance and persistence through challenging times, but also just the undeniable positive impact that ArtLifting had on their lives. And it really is a treat to be able to kind of share this with a broader audience and to welcome Liz and Aimee to be with us today. So Liz and Aimee, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So before we get into the questions that we've prepared, as Greg noted, would love to invite both of you just to share a little bit more about your personal background that will inform the rest of our discussion today. So Liz, we'll go ahead and start with you, please.
Well, thanks for inviting us, Jackie. My background is I grew up in the Boston area. I went to Harvard undergrad and volunteered in shelters doing social work during undergrad, and then became an art therapist in Central Square, so just down the street from MIT, and started ArtLifting 10 years ago. So it's been a bit of a winding road over the years. I'll hand it to you, Aimee.
Hi, I'm Aimee, and thank you to the whole MIT community for having me. It's such an honor to be here and to share my story. So I'm an abstract painter, an artist that has been painting over 16 years. I exhibited in local art centers and art fairs, and I'm a mom of 2 kids, a boy and a girl, 13 and 9, and a wife. I live in Westchester, New York. I also happen to be an athlete, a hand cyclist that's going to be doing the New York City Marathon this November. I'm a graduate of NYU Business School. I went to Stern Business School. I double majored in marketing and management, worked in marketing for a few years before I pursued my art career. So I'm happy to be here. Nice to meet you all.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both. So let's start with a little bit of kind of the foundation of both of your stories, and we'll go from there. So Liz, would love to start with you. So you're using your platform to increase awareness for the economic mobility issues that our society struggles with. So could you talk a little bit more about ArtLifting and how the work that you do can support this initiative and helps to further the positive economic impact for those that you serve?
Definitely. Just gonna screen share. So as an art company, we can't not have visuals. I'm just gonna. So a little bit of background. As I mentioned, I started ArtLifting about 10 years ago. The motivation was I was an art therapist after I graduated from Harvard in local shelters. And before that, I graduated in 2010. During the 4 years of social work from 2006 to 2010, I had clients tell me, Liz, I want an opportunity, not a handout. But of course, 2008, last recession, people had a lot of time, a really hard time getting jobs. And it just felt like kind of bang your head against the wall frustration of some clients literally applied to 100 jobs and they were, quote, lucky when they got a rejection, because at least that was a response. So I had thought, how can I redefine what a quote unquote job is in order to include more people in the economy? I didn't have an answer to that. I just had that question in my mind for years. And then when I was an art therapist in shelters, everything clicked because I saw really saleable work that was literally stuffed in the closets of the shelters where I worked, and learned that even though that sounds like a very niche job of running art therapy groups in social service agencies, there are actually about 1,000 existing art groups like that in the US alone. So that meant there were 1,000 closets stuffed with art. What a no-brainer to create a marketplace and curate that top work and sell it to individuals and corporations. So that's what we do. You'll get to see Aimee's art for most of today, but just wanted to start off so you can see the diversity of the work with other ArtLifting artists. So this piece is created by artist Mia Brown. And this is an example of the same piece transformed into a wall covering. Mia has cerebral palsy and considers herself an entrepreneur. She creates her work using her magic wand, she calls it, and has sold to the CEO of LinkedIn, to Warner Media headquarters. And it's been incredible to watch her career soar. Another example, actually, I don't want to spend too much time away from Aimee, but we've scaled quite a bit over the years. Our artists have earned over 6 million, and we work with 400 corporations now just to see the work in space. This is a map of Boston in the headquarters of Rapid7, a local cybersecurity company. This is a rendering, a concept of a 3D sculpture from one of our artists, David McCauley. We partner with Bank of America for 2,500 of their financial centers. This is artist Rudolph Jean Louis in front of his work in Bank of America. This is an example of artist Yvette in front of her mural in Verizon's headquarters in Texas. And artist Lisa Murphy, this is a rendering of her work turned into phone booths. So it's been incredible to scale over the years and take the seed of an idea and grow it and see the impact on our artists, but also all the individuals who have gotten the opportunity to not only see the work, but hear and read about the artist stories.
Oh, it's just beautiful, Liz. Thank you. They're really stunning work. So thank you very much for sharing. And Aimee, we would love to hear more about your personal journey. So could you share more about why you're drawn to art and about how art came back into your life?
Yes, well, I've been painting for over 16 years, but I originally graduated in marketing and management at Stern Business School. And after graduating from NYU, I worked in marketing for a few years. And although I had a strong passion for marketing, and I still do, I was always yearning for some kind of creative outlet. But at the time, I didn't know what my medium was. But then, so suddenly in 2006, I was suddenly struck with something called transverse myelitis. It's an inflammation in the spinal cord, which paralyzed me from the waist down. And it happened over the course of one day. I started losing sensation in my legs and my feet, was rushed to the hospital. They took an MRI and they said, you have an inflammation in your spine, which caused damage. So there is a chance that you may never walk again. So I was paralyzed from level T10 of the spine and below. And you could just imagine hearing those words. It was like the most shocking, traumatic time of my life. So what happened was I ended up staying in the hospital for about 2 months to do inpatient rehab. And during my hospital stay, they were running a therapeutic art program for patients who were traumatically injured, like myself. So the art therapist walks into my hospital room and with a bunch of paint supplies and says, here, paint whatever you feel, paint whatever you like. And although I was hesitant at first because it was such an overwhelming time in my life and so many people were trying to throw things at me in order to comfort me, but I'll never forget the moment that I started painting. I just felt a sudden sense of peace wash over me and joy. And that's when I knew hope was in my future, joy was in my future, and I knew that painting was going to be my passion. So as soon as I was released from the hospital, the first thing I did was buy more painting supplies and continued on painting throughout the next 16 years. And I did this while having and raising 2 kids. And it wasn't until the start of the pandemic where I decided to start my own art business. All of a sudden, I had this strong desire to share my art with the rest of the world. So I started to market and sell my work online. I put together my own website, and I was able to use my past marketing expertise into my own art business. And I started doing commissions for people in my community, started participating in local art exhibitions and art fairs, and sales grew every year from there. And about 1.5 years, I signed with the ArtLifting company, which has just been so amazing. Through them, I was able to sell to corporations for the first time, and just seeing my work up in corporate spaces has been unbelievable. It's been a dream come true. So that's kind of like my story in a nutshell. It's almost as if I had to go through this whole traumatic journey in order for art to come back into my life again.
Well, thank you, Aimee. It's a beautiful story, and we appreciate your openness and willingness to share. So thank you very much. And Liz, we'd love to turn back to you to talk a little bit more about kind of your pathway as a founder, as an entrepreneur. So in school, we talk a lot about the fact that entrepreneurs have different pathways or different choices that they can make when building a business. And ArtLifting has defined itself as a business for good. So would love to talk more about and learn from you more about how you considered different business models along the way, and then ultimately decided on this pathway, and kind of what maybe influenced your business decisions and the business model that you ultimately chose. Oh, Liz, sorry, you're muted.
Thanks.
Oh,
Certainly. So before ArtLifting, I had volunteered with nonprofits for 7 years. And I was really tired of always having my hand out. So writing, one very dramatic example is I had I think it was a 15-page grant application for a $5,000 grant. So very little money for the amount of work. And it took a year from when I applied to the grant to when I received it. So just moments like that added up of this is not the most efficient use of my time to maximize the impact that I want to have. So when we were starting ArtLifting as a for-profit social enterprise, a lot of people were like, this is having an impact, therefore it should be a nonprofit. But I really pushed back against that of saying, well, actually, I can have a much bigger impact if I'm financially sustainable and align the incentives of the larger ArtLifting is, then the more impact we have, meaning the more awareness about our artists and the more money they make. So ArtLifting is what's called a public benefit corporation. That's a filing status many people have never heard of. Basically, there's a spectrum. Of course, everyone's heard of a C corporation, so a normal, quote unquote, normal business. And then there's a 501c3 nonprofit. A public benefit corporation's right in the middle. So we have a legally binding social mission, but we're also for profit. So we were able to get investors. We raised, after bootstrapping, from 4,000 of our savings to 6 figures in revenue. We were then able to raise $2.5 million in investment to be able to hire a team and scale our impact. So it's been a really rewarding structure for us. And that's what's enabled us to scale to have 180 artists in 33 states who've earned millions, as I mentioned. And now we have a full-time staff of 25.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Liz. And Aimee, could we talk a little bit more about the inspiration behind your art and how you've created your business?
Sure. There's just so much that inspired me. I'm so inspired by water. As you can see, there's a lot of imagery of different bodies of water in the ocean in a lot of my pieces. I'm inspired by different color palettes that I get from fashion, and also I'm inspired by the energy from certain music. But my biggest inspiration and motivator of all is my strong desire to change perceptions of how people feel about disabilities in general. And I use that through a range of tools and techniques that's reflected in my work. So, for example, I'm notoriously known, as you could see here, to use old wheels from previous wheelchairs to create these beautiful track marks along the canvas. And I not only do it for the aesthetic appeal, but I want to do it because I want to encourage the art viewer to see the wheelchairs as tools or catalysts that can move things forward, that can create change. And as a result, create something beautiful as opposed to seeing them as things that trap or confine us. And yes, our disabilities do trap and confine us in some ways, but the wheelchairs help us navigate the world. And I love how these track marks kind of represent the idea of inclusion and the fact that everybody navigates the world in their own unique way. Everybody makes their own unique mark in this world. And we should embrace that because I believe in fair representation. So I do use a lot of symbolism in my work. I want to give the piece meaning, and I want it to reflect my own personal journey after acquiring a disability. So for example, all my life, even before I was in a wheelchair, like so many people in this world, I did struggle with a lot of toxic perfectionism. And so after getting paralyzed, actually, I felt quite the opposite. I felt imperfect in so many ways, and I felt broken. So over the years, I did a lot of self-reflective work and learned about self-acceptance and kind of just embracing the beauty of imperfections within myself, embracing the beauty in others. And so, for example, I use a lot of poured splattered paints that I pour all over the canvas. And as a result, I love watching the natural interactions, and they create all these little detailed, beautiful imperfections. And I use different size swirl brushes to create my signature swirls. And I call them my signature swirls because they're in all my paintings, and some of them are hidden behind layers. But they kind of represent the idea that everything comes full circle in life. I love how the swirls lead the viewer's eye on this journey around the painting and then back to where it started. So similar to what we do in life, we go through ups and downs and all these adversities, but we come back to the place we were meant to be. So I use a lot of bright color palette, as I was saying before. Bright color is my way of using my voice, of being seen and being heard. So I do use a lot of intuition when I create, but I also make a lot of conscious decisions in the tools and process and techniques that I use, because I want to give the piece meaning, and I want it to reflect my personal journey.
Well, thank you so much, Aimee. There's just so many beautiful messages woven in there, and that have certainly shown through in your art. So that's just fantastic. Thank you very much. So we'd love to turn now from the inspiration behind your work to impact. So Liz, we'll start with you, and would love to learn a little bit more about how ArtLifting measures the impact that you have, not just the impact on clients, but also, on artists, but also the impact that you have working with clients, and how clients are utilizing your work for good.
Certainly. So we think about our artist impact in two ways. The first one's very obvious, of financial impact. So the fact that our artists have earned more than 6 million cumulatively, we're really proud of. But we also feel like we're at the tip of the iceberg in terms of the impact we can make long-term. Our long-term vision in terms of artist financial impact is for all of our artists to earn a living wage. We have a lot of work to go to get there, but that's kind of our North Star in terms of the team's work each day. We also think about the emotional impact on our artists. So we've heard like endless, many artists say, now I have reason to get out of bed in the morning. I feel grateful that I am defined by my talents rather than my circumstance. To me, the emotional impact is just as important, if not more important, than the financial impact. And speaking of emotional impact, we kind of measure the impact on our clients in that way as well. We want to kind of create warmer environments in corporations, or with the Bank of America example, in banks, where people are willing to kind of share their own adversities and own mental health challenges or other things that they've faced, and be inspired by. Every piece comes with a plaque next to it with the photo of the artist, if the artist is verbal, a quote from them, and their bio. So we see that as conversation starters. Of oftentimes it's really difficult to talk about mental health challenges, for example, but our goal is to help lead to education and help end stereotypes. We've heard kind of countless stereotypes that our artists have experienced throughout their life of, for example, if someone happens to not have housing, of others assuming, well, all homeless people are lazy. Well, actually, 50% of homeless women have experienced domestic violence. That's not being lazy. That's an incredibly challenging circumstance. So in terms of client impact, we measure that in a couple ways. Like, some is just anecdotal, of them saying this changed the environment, people are way more open, and we're working on developing more anonymous surveys, and how can we make kind of measure this more quantitatively as well.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Liz. And Aimee, building upon Liz's comments, would love to learn from you how selling your art has had an impact on your life.
Well, it's had such an impact on my life in just so many ways. I mean, first of all, it's brought peace, joy, and happiness into my life during the most difficult time. So if I could bring about those same emotions in someone else's living or working space, then I know that I've done my job as an artist. So I feel a huge sense of accomplishment. And not only that, a huge sense of empowerment. So just adding on to speaking about stereotypes, for example, I'm an Asian female with a disability. So I'm in several minority groups already that have not been seen or heard in the past, or had a seat at the table. And I know that representation has improved dramatically over the last few years. But for example, all my life, I faced stereotypes, even throughout childhood. I was the only Asian growing up in a mostly Caucasian community. And then over the years, I just watched an increase in anti-Asian hate violence, which has been disappointing and heartbreaking. And as a person who acquired a disability during adulthood for the first time in my life, I experienced misconceptions and stereotypes about disabilities. And I noticed for the first time in my life a lack of accessibility basically everywhere in public spaces. And so as a female, especially in the art market, I witnessed that female artists are paid less than male artists. We make a lower percentage of sales in the art market. So all these personal experiences that I've had and witnessed throughout my life just makes me feel like we were being pigeonholed by how society sees us. So my art is my way of kind of reclaiming the narrative on all my identities in my own way. It's my way of using my voice, of being seen and being heard. And so when companies and individuals acquire my art, that's just telling me that they see me, they hear me, they understand the message that I'm trying to convey through my art. So it definitely has an impact on my life mentally and emotionally, but has also improved the quality of my life. As Liz was saying, it gives us financial security and freedom. So people may or may not be aware of this, but people with disabilities have higher costs of living just because we have more health issues. So we have higher medical costs. We have to invest in accessibility in our daily lives, like our car and an accessible home. And I know ArtLifting has helped me just tremendously with that. So it has also, along with empowering me, it has also improved the quality of my life.
Well, thank you for sharing those specific examples too, Aimee. It really helps to highlight the impact and the importance of this work overall. So thank you very much. And kind of building upon that too, would love to move now to talk a little bit more about how others who are participating on the call today or may watch the recording after can think about ways to incorporate what you're sharing today into their own experiences. So Liz, I'd love to start with you. I know you mentioned Bank of America as a corporate partner, but could you give some examples about how ArtLifting has worked with corporations and how, possibly people that are viewing this could think about how their corporations could work with you?
Certainly. So as I mentioned, when we work with corporations, the visibility that Aimee was just saying is super important. So having that visible overall plaque. This is an example of our work with Google. A couple of specific examples of what we've done with Google. They're one of our 415 corporate partners. This was for their accessibility office. They wanted something that individuals who aren't able to see could still experience. So this is a map by one of our artists, Alan Chamberlain. And it purposely has multiple layers of wood, as you can tell from the photo. So you can feel the artwork, even if you don't have sight. My favorite part about this work is that he left kind of an Easter egg present for individuals who are able to read Braille. The bottom edge of this frame has a Braille message. So you'd never be able to experience if you were sighted, but I love that he was so thoughtful with that piece. Another thing that has been really popular since COVID happened is thinking about rental rotations in spaces. This is in Google's LA office. So every quarter, there's a different kind of theme. So maybe in the fall, having Veterans Day in November, there could be a theme of veteran artists that quarter versus during Mental Health Awareness Month during that quarter could be artists who have experienced mental health challenges. It's been kind of really exciting to align with corporations' focus on kind of making their very diverse employee bases visible. For example, basically every corporation has what they call employee resource groups. So it could be for mothers or for Black employees or Hispanic employees or employees with disabilities or caretakers. of individuals with disabilities. So this has been a way to keep the space fresh and kind of give people a reason to come in the office, because obviously that's a challenge for many corporations post-COVID, but also help contribute to their DEI and ESG goals.
Wonderful. Thank you, Liz. That's a beautiful example. And so, Aimee, similarly, there may be people that are in the audience today that would like to pursue a path similar to yours and maybe aren't sure how. So would love for you to share your advice. What would you tell them, or what recommendations might you have?
Well, first I would say is to start with yourself, work on your own mindset, and set a disciplined art practice, meaning make it a point to create every day and keep creating and never stop creating. Make it a part of your routine and set a certain time in your schedule in which you have to create, whether it's photography or drawing or filmmaking or writing, whatever your craft may be, just make sure you keep creating every day. And the next step I would say is to start local, start in your own community. Seek out what's next door, like in your local art fairs or art centers or community center, or even your local library and small businesses like cafes or restaurants, and see where you could participate in a group exhibition. And if you're a filmmaker, if you could have a viewing somewhere, or if you're a writer, a reading. So there's so many opportunities in your own hood, and you never know unless you do your own research, which goes into my next point is to be your own marketing director. I mean, be your own marketing director, spread the word about yourself and your art, because the more you do that, you could discover you have connections that you never knew about. And a lot of people say it's unfair that the successful ones are the ones that had the connections. But guess what? You probably have connections that you don't know about. Like if you probably have a friend of a friend who works for a gallery, or you probably a friend's cousin can work for a film festival. So you just never know until you get the word out there. And I would also create an online presence, maybe start your own website, start sharing your work online, have the courage to do that, even though it may be hard and scary at first. And I know I was like terrified when I first started sharing my work online, but you build confidence and it gets easier, and then you get feedback, which also could be helpful. And if you're really serious about pursuing a career, a creative career, I would say to build inventory and, build a good body of work that you are proud of, that you could submit to galleries for representation, that you could submit to publishing companies or film festivals. And the only way that you're going to do that is if you keep creating every day, even if what you're first creating may turn out bad, but you'll see when you do that, your work will keep evolving and growing, and you will also evolve as an artist. So those are my main points. Be your own marketing director and keep creating.
I love that. Be your own best advocate, right? I think that's
Yes.
really wonderful advice. Thank you, Aimee. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So before we move into the kind of open questions and questions for our audience members, I always like to end on a kind of a forward-looking note. So would love to turn that back to both of you to talk about what the future looks like. So Liz, we'll start with you again. Could you share a little bit more about what is your long-term vision for ArtLifting? What does the future potentially look like?
Certainly. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have artists in 33 states so far. Our vision is to expand to have artists in all 50 states and also internationally. And in terms of the impact on our artists, our vision is to have the living wage. So we have a handful of artists who are earning 6 figures this year as an example, but it's not the majority of our 180 artists. So we're super focused on how to increase that impact. In terms of our impact on our corporate partners, we'd love to be the leader in the corporate art market, and at the same time be the leader in creating education about accessibility and how to not create stereotypes about individuals who happen to have a disability or happen to be housing insecure. So being as impactful as possible on our artists, both emotionally and financially, but also social educators.
I love that, Liz. It's really inspiring. So thank you very much. I love it. And Aimee, please share a little bit more about your hopes for the future and what you'd like to pursue.
Yes, I have so many hopes. I mean, like I said before, I think representation has just improved dramatically over the last decade. And that's been really amazing to see. But of course, I feel that there's always more work to be done. I mean, we need more opportunity. And also, in my opinion, there needs to be like an improvement in accessibility everywhere. So, because I feel like accessibility and representation have to happen in tandem. They come hand in hand. Like, for example, the places that represent us also have to be accessible to us. And the only way we're going to do that is if we take positive action and make that a part, and organizations have to make that a part of corporate social responsibility. Hopefully companies will continue to address the needs and issues of people with disabilities. And as a result, I think it would help people with disabilities grow and evolve in any industry that they're trying to excel in. And we just have to keep educating people about different disability populations and their subgroups and constantly want to share our stories. And you could do that by sharing our stories through our art, by showcasing and representing us, by hiring talent with people with disabilities. And I'm just going to keep creating every day. And my dream is that inclusion is not something that we have to keep fighting for, but it'll be common practice for everybody. And like Liz was saying before, that her other artist said, we don't really want a handout, we want an opportunity. So hopefully people will see us for experts in our field. So we're not just artists with disabilities, but we are artists, period. We are athletes. We're CEOs of companies and political leaders, and the list goes on, because I really feel like we're a valuable group. We have so many talents only because of what we've already been through in life. I mean, I think we're innovative, we're resilient to change, and we're flexible. So this is all because of the challenges that we've already gone through. So hopefully more and more people see that we're valuable contributors to the economy and society.
I wholeheartedly agree with what you were just saying, Aimee, and absolutely, I can see and feel your passion too, and I'm sure others can as well. So thank you very much. So we'll turn to a couple of questions that we received. So the first is it's for Liz. So Liz, you mentioned that ArtLifting is a public benefit corporation, and ArtLifting is definitely an example of a kind of a road less traveled. So could you share some of the challenges or surprises that may have been associated with navigating this type of a business structure, given that it's less well known than others? And a second to that is there anything you wish you had known in the beginning that you know now when you were building out the corporate structure?
Yeah, I definitely had a lot of people doubting the corporate structure in the early days. And, this was 10 years ago. So I think social enterprise has made a ton of progress in those 10 years, but 10 years ago, it was a much more of a foreign concept. Challenges regarding it had, speaking of being social educators, had to do a lot of education and still do, of what is a public benefit corporation, what are the pros and cons of that structure versus a 501c3 or versus a C corporation. And also, what's the difference between a public benefit corporation versus, a lot of times people hear the term B Corp. Just to share what the difference is, because people are probably curious. A B Corp is ironically a nonprofit that certifies C corporations to show you're doing social good. The government caught on. This nonprofit called B Lab is the organization that certifies B Corps, and the government was like, "Oh, this is a great concept. Why don't we just have a filing status for this concept, so people don't need to also get certified. So we're that legal filing status as a public benefit corporation. So education was both a challenge and opportunity of sharing with people why we chose this. For me, it was incredibly important when raising investment to have our legally binding social mission, because I was a bit cynical, to be honest, even pitching investors. I thought, well, what if they want to twist our mission and say, from day one, our artists have earned 55% of the profit from each sale. What if investors tried to twist the mission and say artists should get less? So that wasn't a risk with our filing status, given we have our legally binding social mission. And I believe there's a second question, but I forget what it was, Jackie.
Oh, yes. So the follow-on to that, sorry, let me go back. Sorry, I'm not. The follow-on to that is there anything else that you wish you had known in the beginning, whether it's about building the corporate structure or just in general from a business standpoint?
The first 2 years, we focused on sales to individuals, and then 8 years ago pivoted to our focus on sales to corporations. We sell to both, but the majority of our revenue comes from corporations. In terms of something I wish I knew back in the day is kind of focus on how to make the most impact as quickly as possible. We pretty quickly learned that selling to individuals is very challenging. While we were able to bootstrap to 6 figures, even so many of those individuals were huge supporters of us, but they just have one fireplace where the artwork's hanging above, and they're in this small apartment, and it's not like a pair of shoes where you wear them out and you need to buy more, and art doesn't wear out. So that was really helpful to learn over the years of working with a Fortune 500 company versus an individual. As an example of Google, as an example, we've sold to 20 of their offices so far, but they have 200 in total. So similar to that pair of shoes example, like there's always room for growth of partnerships within corporations, whereas it's much more challenging and inefficient by focusing on individuals.
That's a really interesting insight. Thank you, Liz. And Aimee, I think I'd love to actually pose the same question to you. So certainly as you're building your business, is there anything you wish you had known that you know now that you knew in the beginning? Or did not know in the beginning, excuse me.
I discovered I'm just not a person for patience. So when I first started, I just it took me so long to find the courage to share my work. But once I did, I was just in a rush to get this business up and going and started. I was in a rush to sell and just put my work out there. So I was kind of like an engine. Like once I was turned on, I was going and going, and I didn't stop. So I wish and now I'm just I'm more focused on the quality of the work. Now I take more time in creating pieces, and also I'm working on a lot of larger pieces now than I used to, like more large scale, like gallery size pieces. So yeah, I'm more focused on the quality of the work as opposed to just rushing the whole process. So I just wish I could have taken my time more and just educated myself more about different processes and techniques before trying to just get my work out there and sell. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. It certainly sounds like probably both have been a learning process along the way, and it sounds like it certainly has been successful. So a couple other questions. So and again, Liz, I think this is directed more towards ArtLifting. So you mentioned that you have different corporate partnerships, like Bank of America or Google, but have you also partnered with any community organizations? And if so, could you speak to those as well?
Yeah, so we partner with a ton of community organizations. So in the 33 states where we have artists, we're also partnering with several community partners. Typically, they're nonprofits focused on art therapy with individuals with disabilities. We also partner with shelter art therapy programs. We also kind of learned over the years that so many nonprofits have blank walls and can't afford our work, but would love to fill the blank walls. So we came up with a really creative solution to solve that with our rental rotation model. At the end of a rotation, we donate all those pieces that were hanging in the corporation to a local nonprofit. So that's been super meaningful of seeing, for example, individuals who are formerly homeless and now have housing, getting to see work of fellow artists who have been on that journey. Other nonprofits that we've worked with have been nonprofits with hospice care, and we've heard from families of how much that has meant to both the individuals in hospice care, but also the families supporting them. So we're really proud of that. We call it our double impact model, but that way to kind of continue spreading the inspiration throughout the community.
I really love that. That's really beautiful and so meaningful too, that it's able to have such a positive impact in both ways in the community. So that's wonderful. Thank you. And then another question too, and again, I think this is art lifting focus, but and this is in regards, Liz, to your artist advisory board. And it supports the growth and development of the organization, as you know. But could you share a little bit more about how the board has influenced the direction of the organization and any kind of insights that may have been derived?
Yeah, so we established our artist advisory board about a year and a half ago. We purposely have it rotating each year so artists can apply to be on it. We choose 5 or 6 artists each year. We make sure that our artists represent the diversity of our base. So for example, for individuals with developmental disabilities who are nonverbal, we make sure we have at least one caretaker on the board. We make sure we have diversity in terms of sexual orientation, race, gender, and lived experience. It's been incredibly helpful having the quarterly meetings with that board. One really meaningful piece of feedback we had was we've had our team wondering, like, what's the right balance between sharing people's stories and being a social educator versus, as Aimee was saying, of not focus on an artist who happens to have a disability, but this is an incredible artist, and just focusing on the work alone. So we were able to kind of share the decks that we have with clients with our artist advisory board to ask them, are we having the right balance between storytelling and art focus, or should we change in any way? In general, our artists were really proud of the materials and didn't suggest a dramatic shift in either direction, but there was really like nuanced recommendations that the team applied immediately.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. Thank you. And actually, a follow-on question to that, as it relates to the board, is are there any really particularly memorable stories or insights that the board has provided over the last year that have been meaningful in the business?
I mean, that one, and specifically another was our artists recommending adding pronouns to the website for all of our artists and our team. So that was something that was like, of course, why haven't we done this yet? Thank you for suggesting it. And we implemented that change.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. And I guess I think we have time for one last question before I wrap up, and this is for Aimee. Before we go, are there any favorite memories or stories that you have just with your partnership and association with ArtLifting?
I've only been signed with them for a year and a half, but I already feel like we already have so many good memories. It was really exciting to meet one of our clients. We met with the Ibsen company, which was amazing. And the whole staff came out to meet me, and I was able to participate in advising them where to curate and hang my pieces, which was really nice. And so I think that's the rewarding thing about this job is meeting the clients face to face and seeing what an impact the artwork has made and how it just changed the spirit in the whole corporation, and just seeing that in person, I think it made such a difference. We also had a huge event, disability in event in Orlando, Florida. And I got to do a lot. It was sponsored by Google, and I was able to do a live painting in front of hundreds, which was really, really exciting and fun.
It's incredible.
Yes.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, I think those are two perfect examples and ways in which to close out that really highlights just the impact in a personal way that, Liz, that you and the team are having at ArtLifting, and Aimee, just your incredible work and your story of perseverance. We so appreciate you taking the time, both of you, to be with us today. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and certainly know that others have as well. So before we go, I do want to turn it back over to Greg. I know he has a couple of closing remarks for everyone in the audience. So Greg, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Liz and Aimee, for your inspiring work and for sharing your stories with us today. There are just so many beautiful lessons on accessibility and inclusion and really making an impact on the world. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. For our viewers, thank you for joining us and learning with us today. When you close out of the webinar, you'll see a survey appear on your screen. So please go ahead and fill that out for us and give us your feedback on this session, as well as on our ongoing lineup of events. But we will see you next month for our next event in the series on November 8th. Join us then. Liz, Aimee, Jackie, thank you so much again for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care.